Welcome to Allies or Enemies. Today we are talking about An Age Contrived. Our copy was provided for review, but our thoughts are all our own. Designed by Chris Matthew, An Age Contrived is a 1 to 5 player game that pits gods against each other as they roam the land and try to gain followers, which takes the form of an action selection with a smidge of programming and engine building, all wrapped up in an undeniably pretty package. But before we get into how it looks, let's start with how it plays.
At the start of the game, you will have a bunch of basic devices with some preloaded energy and a character waiting to go a-wandering. On your turn, you can either take actions or recharge. If you recharge, you slide all your devices to the right, add a new one to the left, and refill it with energy. If you take actions, you take energy from the bottom of your board and do the thing in that slot. These include buying new devices to replace your current ones, moving your energy around the board, moving your character, moving up the monument and pillar tracks, and perhaps most importantly, putting energy from the top of your devices onto the board, which will sometimes mean claiming achievements, but will mostly mean adding them to matching spaces on unfinished monuments. At the end of your turn, any filled monument bits are built, allowing everyone who took part to gain either a special action or more energy. During all of this, you're also going to be upgrading actions, adding conduit tokens which can combo with your devices, and building bridges that gain you special powers. The game ends once the last monument has been built, and then players add up points from gained energy, special bridge tokens, achievements, and energy placed on monuments and pillars, and then the most powerful god is named.
Let's start with the biggest positive, and that is the components. We have the retail version of the game, and honestly, this already feels like it's almost too much. The actual monuments are the star of the show here, and they consist of magnetic pieces that stick to metal frames that poke through the board. It is very fancy and does work well. The chunky energy tokens feel great. The player boards and device boards are all lovely and are even double-sided if you want different art. And the different character sculpts are very cool. The board is also nice, and for the most part, everything has a clear place to be. What isn't so clear, however, is the iconography. While you get used to some of it, there are still more than a few things we are regularly looking up a few plays in. The same is true for the rulebook, which makes everything a lot more complex than it needs to be.
The biggest point of variability will come from the 5 different characters who all have a bit of asymmetry in their uncovered bridge powers, and these can push you in slightly different directions. There are also achievements that will be randomly selected each game, and you can choose different monuments to be active, although these do basically work the same. Also, a few different actions will be available each game depending on which side of your bridges you choose to place out. However, your main goal on each turn will either be adding energy to those monuments or setting up to add energy to those monuments. But there are some secondary paths, like focusing on character movement one game, or placing more energy on the pillars another, or going big on upgrades. And there can be some small combos that come from all that monument building with the actions you gain and the energy bonuses, so there is a bit of nuance to the whole thing. But in general, building those monuments is the real goal at the heart of the game.
As usual, we focused on the 2-player experience, and it works fine at that count. The main point of interaction in the game is on the monuments, in that you mostly want to place the last bit to get that sweet binding bonus, but you also want to be present on a few monuments at a time to get the bonus actions. But because more monuments come out with more players, this shouldn't change drastically, although it may be a bit harder to plan ahead. Otherwise, the main difference will be playtime, although we were surprised at how fast this game played. Most turns play super quickly, but even when a lot happens on a turn, because everyone with a token present on a monument gets to take a bonus action, you tend to have things to do even when you're not in the spotlight. There is also a solo mode, which is controlled through a deck of cards, and has slightly different setups and focuses depending on the opponent you choose. On the plus side, it does provide a full opponent that plays pretty much like a real opponent, and it's a solid challenge. But it is a lot of work to run, and the rulebook is more than a bit clunky, so it will take a bit of patience.
Overall, this is a bit of a tricky one to play. So let's start with the good stuff. And first of all, the production is fantastic, especially with the retail edition that has loads of nice bits, but without some of those unnecessary extras. And there are some interesting ideas here with the preloading of your energy to set up for future turns and the potential for some fun little combos. But there are also a few things that might be trickies for some folk. The game is a bit lighter than you might expect, with really 3 key actions moving the whole thing. And while it looks a bit like it's going to be an area control game from the outside, it's really more of a Euro with largely positive interactions. You're also going to need to have a little bit of patience with that rulebook, and the theme doesn't come through quite as much as you'd expect. That said, this may well appeal to people who like nice productions and enjoy the idea of combining a bit of programming with some combos and a little bit of engine building in a bundle that won't break your brain. This is one that will find its fans, but you may want to take a peek first to see how it fits. And that is it. Have you played An Age Contrived? What did you think? And what other fantasy-ish games might you recommend? Please let us know in the comments. And as always, please like and subscribe. And hopefully, we'll see you next time for another game.